All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for making it today for our second of our Beyond the Beer series. We have a couple more coming up in the upcoming months. One in January, we're going to be highlighting a Blue Moon down in Denver. And then we're going to keep continuing the series after January as well. So I understand that these are challenging times for many reasons, but we're so excited to have you here tonight. And we hope that this is a fun and educational webinar for all of you. We are here to build RAM community and be a resource, and we hope that this webinar is one of the ways that we can do that for you. I also want to thank every single member that we have here participating tonight. Without members, we would not be able to host events like this and would not be able to partner with other departments around the university as well as other areas in Colorado. So thank you so much for all of our members. We understand that membership does more than just help with events. It helps with everything else and supports our current students and keeps our RAM Pride strong as well as our community as well. If you guys don't mind just taking a quick moment as I'm speaking, you can feel free to type in the chat your name, what year you graduated, where you're from. We usually get RAMs from all over the place, so it's really nice to see if you have other RAMs in your community that are here tonight. Just make sure that when you type something into the chat that you change your to from all panelists to all panelists and attendees. That way everybody can see your name and everything else too. In just a moment, I'm going to also add a couple things to the chat feature, a helpful article just in case you're having some technology troubles, as well as my contact information. I will also put in information about membership as well as other things that are going on around campus as well. And without further ado, I am excited to announce tonight's guest speakers. We have Jeff Callaway and Jeff Beager. Jeff Callaway is the Associate Director of the Fermentation Sciences and Technology Program and with the College of Health and Human Sciences. And here we also have Jeff Beager, and I hope I'm saying that correctly, Jeff. And he is the head brewer and instructor here at CSU as well. So without further ado, go ahead and take it away, you guys.
Thanks, Corey. So, yep, my name is Jeff Callaway, and I want to thank anybody that has joined on this month, that joined us last month for the RAM Scholar, and hello to our new folks. I see some of our industry friends and some FST alumni, so shout out, what's up, everybody? We're going into the New Belgium Fermentation Science and Technology Laboratory. So this is a behind-the-scenes tour, and there is Jeff Beager that Corey introduced, our head brewer and one of the instructors in the program. Hi, folks. So quick, Jeff's gonna give us a tour of the new brewing system as we go in here. But first, just a quick background. The lab that we're going into actually predates the Ramskeller that we toured last month. For many years, we were working on building out both facilities at the same time, which was ill-advised. Really, nobody advised us. It's just what we had to do. But it was tough. So at some point, we decided we had to commit our resources, and we had a functioning brewing system over here, a small brewing system that was donated by the Odell family many years ago, well before the program. And that was working for our class needs. So we doubled down and focused on the Ramskeller. And we've had many ups and downs over here in the Gifford lab in terms of equipment. We had a 2 hectoliter or 200 liter brewing system partially built and sitting in here for over a year that ended up not working out. That's another story best told over a real beer together. But we've been very fortunate in the FST program, a lot of serendipity. Every downturn or challenge, yields tremendous amount of opportunity. And we have we're very fortunate to have an excellent industry. So as we dumped the one system that was in here, new opportunities presented themselves, and we partnered with Emerson, a global engineering firm, to build out 2 brand new brewing systems that Jeff is going to guide us through. So we can touch back up on during the Q&A on any other details you guys want, but for now, let's head into the lab.
Hey folks, did you do introductions already?
Go for it.
Okay, I'm Jeff Beager, and I know there's some alumni in the audience, so you probably know me, but I've been teaching here in the brewing classes since 2012, and I'm full-time over here now. I have a sponsored position, so my position is paid for by New Belgium and CSU at this point, and having a lot of fun working with Jeff here, developing the program, but really getting the brewing skids in place here. I'm really excited about that, and excited to show you some of the new equipment that we have here. So if you're an alumni, you probably brewed on the system that Jeff just mentioned that was donated by the Odell family, the Sacco system. It's still chugging along and still making great beer, by the way. We just brewed on it yesterday. We're doing the last brew of the semester tomorrow, and it's still a great learning tool. We really wanted to step that up, though, and what we've been working on for a while is having some systems where we can do some real research and do some repeatability and scale-ups to real-world brewing. So that was the intent of designing the new systems that you're going to see here. And what you're going to see is totally unique. There is nothing like this in the world. We worked with the firm up in Canada, Lakeside Engineering, which is a partner of Emerson, which Jeff just mentioned, and they're really fun to work with. So we designed and engineered the system with them. This system was inspired, as you'll see, that was inspired by a small pilot system that I brewed on when I was at the Siebel Institute about 100 years ago or so, I think. But it's a partial gravity brew system, and I'll take you through the process there. But yeah, I don't know what else to tell you here. If you don't know me, I've been in the brewing industry for close to 30 years now, and I've been really jazzed to be able to be in this program and teach in this program and just see all the awesome students come through here, and I have a lot of fun with it. It really is a lot of fun. So yeah, maybe we should start with the water tanks, and then we'll show the systems. What do you think, Jeff?
Perfect.
Yeah. So starting over here, we have this is actually left over from our previous project, the 2 hectoliter system. We spec'd out 2, I think they're 5 hectoliter, right? 2 5 hectoliter water storage tanks. So if you brewed here before, you probably know that one of the challenges we've had is cooling wort consistently, because the water at the university here can have high and low swings in temperature. So the idea here is we have hot water that's always consistent, and cold water that's really consistent for knocking out. If you don't know what knockout is, it's cooling the wort down after the brewing process. So this is what we call, in brewing, we call this liquor. It's not actually booze liquor, it's water. So whatever reason brewers call water that we brew, we call it liquor. So these are hooked up to a couple pumps that are, so we're working, by the way, this is a work in progress. So pardon the dust, but there's 2 pumps here that, then we have the stainless piping that will pump the hot and cold liquor around the facility. So we have a hot and cold water loop here, so we can have instant water where we need it in the process, which is, I'm pretty excited about. It's pretty cool. I can't wait to get those going. So I should probably go through, I usually ask for a raise of hands, like how many people are familiar with the brewing process. You know, it's kind of good to know your audience here. So I don't know if you could raise your hands back up.
It's a great order. Let's just
who knows? What's that?
Let's just do it. It's a good order.
Yeah. So we'll just go through the process here. So in terms of brewing, we always start with the mill. Do you want to look at the mill first and go through and do this? This is all about the skids.
Let's do the skids, yeah.
We'll do the skids. So I'll talk about the skids, but then we might go backwards in the process. So yeah, over here, so what we've designed, we have 2 50-liter research brewing systems. So that way we can divide our class or the teams in the class into 2 for the brewing lab and actually do 2 batches of beer at once in here, which is pretty cool. So what you're seeing, this is not a homebrew setup, totally unique, and it's been designed and engineered to behave like a large commercial brewery. Emerson was a huge part of that. The brewing system itself is primarily manual, so all the valves and switches and pumps, they're all manually driven, just on and off. So it's a hybrid system in that we have manual operations, and we also have a lot of inline feedback from inline instruments. So temperature sensors, pressure sensors, full level sensors, flow meters, and mass flow meters as well. I'll talk about that in a minute. So this is one of the skids that you're looking at here behind me. So mash in, it's actually partial gravity. So the vessel, I'm going to try and point the vessel up here is a mash mixer, and this is steam jacketed. So we can do a temperature mash of any type that we want. So starting on protein rest or just doing a straight infusion mash, whatever we want. So the mash mixer holds the grist, which is the grain. This is where the grain, crushed grain and water gets mixed up, and where we have activated the enzymes at proper temperatures and pHs, the enzymes that will break down starch into simple sugars that the yeast will consume to produce alcohol and carbon dioxide later on. So that's the mash tun. On the old system, we did two processes in one. We called it a mash lauter. Lautering is a process of separating the wet grain from the sweet liquid that we extract from it. And that we did that in one vessel. Many small breweries do that in one vessel. It's called a mash lauter. Here we've separated the two. We have a mash mixer, and then we actually drop down by gravity into a lauter tun, this tall, skinny vessel here. And I always get a lot of questions from brewers on this, like, why is it all tall and skinny? That looks really weird. And yes, it does look a little weird. But we sized it up so that the grain bed depth in here would be the same as what you would see in a commercial brewery. So again, many homebrew systems, it's just a pot or a keg or these kinds of things, and they're typically over-designed, and grain bed depth is not typically what you'd see on a commercial system. So in this, we have, for medium, semi-high gravity beer, we're about maybe 14 inches of grain bed depth. So because of that, we can monitor things like lauterability or filterability of the wort and mimic how it's going to behave in a commercial brewery, which is pretty cool. So first part of the process, we'll mill the grain. The mill is actually behind me. We have another mill room over here for larger batches, but we'll mill, bring buckets of grain over. The batch size is not much bigger than we're currently doing on the Sacco system, the old system. So 50 liters, it's a half a hectoliter. It's going to yield about 12 gallons of beer in the end. So about a keg's worth or so. So students will bring the milled grain up this ladder here, and then behind here, this is going to happen.
And as a quick aside, so you guys know the stadium, well, the Richardson Design Center is right through this window, and then the stadium. So we are in the Gifford building. Aaron, we are in Gifford.
Yeah, great. Yeah, so you look behind me here. So they'll come up here to the mash vessel. There's a series of valves over here so that students can mix hot and cold water by hand to achieve what we call strike temperature, which is the proper temperature to mash in at. So that mashing is mixing the grain with the water. So they have an inline temperature sensor to see what that does. They also have an inline flow meter that they'll get feedback on. I'm going to back up a little bit here because all the instruments on this system feed into a central control cabinet where there's a touch screen right behind me here. So on this touch screen, you'll see all these values in real time, temperatures, times that it's been in a vessel, temperature rises, and trending and tracing and graphing of all the brewing processes in here from the inline instruments. Not only that, the really cool technology that Emerson is bringing us is the ability to see all that wirelessly as well. So students can actually download an app on their phone and stand around, watch the brewing process, and they can see exactly what's happening on their phone, which is like amazing. Because one of the things I've always struggled with teaching brewing is you've got maybe 20 students standing around something, and really like one or two doing something, and the rest are like trying to see what's happening, and it's difficult to do. So this is going to really open up the process to be more visible to more students at once, which is really exciting. This screen will also have all temperatures for the fermentation vessels, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll mash in the mash mixer. Mash is going to live in there maybe 30 minutes, an hour, depending what we want to do. Mash mixer also gives us the ability to use unmalted grains too, so we can do what's called a cereal mash and play around with things like corn or rice or sorghum or whatever we want. It really gives us a way more flexibility than we've had in the past. So we can really play around with some interesting raw materials and play around with various brewing parameters around that. The nice thing about a small system like this too is that we're not really committed. We're not throwing in hundreds of pounds of grain. We're throwing in maybe 15 kilos or 20 pounds of grain or something. So in research, it's all about learning what doesn't work as well as learning what does work. And In this case, you know, if we lose a batch or we screwed up, we're going to learn something, and we didn't lose much in the process. So it allows us to be nimble and get multiple batches through. So anyway, I digress. So here's the mash mixer up top with a mixing apparatus as well. It's, again, it's real simple. Everything is hand valves and switches. So when we're going to turn on the mixer, the mash mixer, it's a switch on a panel over here. Boom, switch it on. And then we have inline instruments like this temperature sensor that's reading back in real time what's going on in this mixer. Students won't be hands-on. They're going to turn the steam on, turn the steam off. We can also allow the control cabinets to do that, so the students will have a feel for being able to understand how heat transfer works through a mash mixer into the grain and watching how fast it rises and falls, et cetera, et cetera. So after that process is done, we're going to open up a valve, and then hopefully everything's going to drop down into our lauder tun, which is the next vessel down here. So it's going to drop down to this pipe and then go right into the lauder tun. Alternatively, if we want to do a real simple process like we do now, we could just take the grain and water. It's piped in as such hard pipe that we could just mix the water right in and mash in directly in here, bypassing this altogether. And we have complete flexibility there too. The idea here is that this is going to be an evolving system that we want to keep working with, evolving, changing, experimenting with, and so I see us having a lot of fun with all of this in the future. So the lauder tun is equipped with a false bottom on it. I don't know if it's installed. Let's see.
While Jeff opens that, I want to point out, so these switches, right, for the motors and stuff, you're imagining like, well, hopefully you're imagining no black boxes, right? Like what is that in there? Like contacts it's hitting? It's actually literally a light switch in there. So if we pop this off, it's a light switch. It's just crazy. It's cool.
So I'm not showing this very well, but yeah, the bottom of the lauder vessel, there's a false bottom. There's a stainless steel screen down here. So all the mash sits on top of this, right? And then the screen separates the mash from the liquid. We're going to go into a process called Vorlauf, which is pre-clarification or recirculation out of the bottom of this through a series of pipes, through a pump. Again, this pump is controlled by one of those switches that Jeff just showed you. So this pump just turns on. We turn on, the students open the proper valve. They can control the flow right here if they want to. And then it comes up through the piping here and will be directed back into the top of this for pre-clarification. Okay, so we're filtering the sweet wort in the lauder tun. Then it's time to run off into the kettle, switch the valves and go into the kettle. One thing I'm really excited about here, this is where we have real simple brewing processes like switches and hand valves meeting. Awesome technology. What we have inline out of the lauder tun is something that we have with the Ramskeller as well. So this system is pretty much piped the same way as the Ramskeller brew house, which by the way is like the most technologically advanced 10 hectoliter brewery I've ever seen in my entire career. This has way more automated than this, but we have a mass flow meter in mind that came from Emerson Process. What's really cool about this and tying back into Colorado and the local industry is that the technology used in this mass flow meter was invented in Boulder by a company called Micromotion that Emerson acquired. So really cool that we get to use their instruments here. This allows us to see not only flow rate and how fast the wort is transferring, but it allows us to see mass. And in brewing, we're always talking about volumes and concentration, and mass is concentration. In brewing, we measure it in degrees Plato or specific gravity. Some brewers' degrees breaks. That's their own problem. So Plato or specific gravity. So pretty cool that we have that so we can track and understand the change in density, and the students can see that as we're lautering and use it to calculate efficiencies in their brew. In brewing, it's all about efficiencies, how well we're able to extract all that, the sweet liquid off the grain, et cetera, et cetera. So, and I can just go off and on about that. I won't. So, lautering, and then we switch to the kettle. So the next vessel up here is the brew kettle, steam jacketed as well. So we have 2 steam jacketed vessels here. The steam is controlled by automated valves. They're called solenoid valves that will open when the temperature is called for. So students can put in a temperature set point, and then the control cabinet over there will open up a valve and control the steam, turn it on and off to try and maintain that temperature. In this case, we're going to go and boil. In the mash tun, the temperature might be maybe 65 C or something like that, maybe raise it to 78. Likewise, kind of behind the scenes, we have a bunch of water piping that kind of bypass this, but the water valve matrix that I talked about earlier, where the students can mix the temperature they need to mash in with, goes by a flow meter and another temperature sensor. It's hard to see. So that flow meter as well, the students can say, I want I don't know, 20 liters of water to sparge with. Sparging is rinsing, getting the extract out of the grains. They can put that number in, and the computer will calculate that automatically, and they'll get a flag to say, like, okay, time to shut that off. But in the end, the student's going to have to shut it off. And then it's all the difference between what they wanted and versus what they get. So pretty cool. That same flow meter, the hot water will go by. It's routed up here to the top of the water tun through a spray ball that sparges or rinses the top of the grain bed as we're pulling sweet liquid off and transferring to the kettle, recovering all the extract or all the sweet, what we call sweet wort. It's all the sweet liquid that we recovered from the grain. After that's done, students will drain this out and then shove all the spent grain out of here. It's really not a lot, but I'm hoping that somebody might be interested in growing some mushrooms outside on that. That would be kind of cool. Or coming up with some kind of new ferment from the spent grain, or maybe even baking bread. That would be pretty sweet. So, or a chicken farm. How about a chicken farm, Jeff? Does that sound pretty good?
Let's do it.
Yeah, let's do a chicken farm. All right, cool. So we go over to the kettle, which also has a temperature sensor on it, so we can maintain a boil and understand, how does altitude affect boiling temperature? It's a little lower up here. Pretty straightforward. There's a lid for adding any additions in here, hops, et cetera, et cetera. It's a nice feature up top too that I designed in to have a condensate rig, so condensate can drop down and then be drained off and actually analyzed for volatile compounds that we're concerned with, namely dimethyl sulfide during the boil, so we can look at that. Pretty cool. And so we boil for about an hour or so to concentrate the liquid, to make it microbiologically stable, to isomerize hops, which means get bittering flavors out of the hops, or any spices or anything we want to put in here. And then when the boil is done, we have another separate vessel. So in the old system, we had two vessels: mash, water, boil, done. Over here, we have a whirlpool, a separate whirlpool. And I'm pretty excited about the whirlpool. It's able to operate just from gravity alone. When the boil is done, we just open a couple valves, and everything flows into this vessel here through a side port, and just starts the whirlpool. We have the ability to recirculate it and or cool it and play around with things like post-boil hopping at various temperatures or whatever we want here. Whirlpooling is just a place where we're able to settle out hop material and proteinaceous material that's been precipitated out during the boil. So it's another clarification process or separation process. So we can play around with this. We can also pump, recirculate it, or whatever we want here. So it's all piped in, hard piped. Just a matter of playing around with the valves here to change the position of where we want things to flow. Maybe tilt it down a little, check out, or zoom in on the valve matrix down here. So underneath here, we got a lot of different valves. One that goes to drain, one that goes to the whirlpool, and then other valves that go out of the whirlpool through another pump that will pump it. We could actually pump it back into the whirlpool itself, or to through a heat exchanger to cool down after the whirlpool, to cool it down to get down to a temperature that we could put yeast in at, so for the fermentation temperature. There's also an inline temperature sensor here, so we can understand what the temperature difference is between the whirlpool and post heat exchanger. Come around here, probably best to see from this side.
And Jeff, while you're walking over there, we have a quick question. So does the HMI interact with the phone app, and is it all remote controlled powered?
Remote controlled powered. The phone app is really for feedback, so you can't control it from the phone, but it's more for seeing, visualizing what's going on. And then the control panel, of which we'll have two. One panel behind us, and we're going to have a remote computer station kind of over here where I'm pointing. That the students can look at and do set point temperatures and look at the whole process as well. So phone app's not for controlling, it's just for looking. But the cool thing about the phone app, it's cloud-based, so the students can go back later on and see what happened to the brew and use that data for lab reports. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it sounds like it did.
I'll say that in the RAM scaler, we do have more remote control abilities. We of course don't use them for safety reasons. We can remote in and view what's going on. Technically, we could open and close valves, but it's major safety no-no, so we don't do that. On this system, yeah, no, it's a resource for the students to see what's going on and keep track of records, but no remote control ability on this one.
That brings up a good point. There's really only 2 points here that can be actually automated by the control system. That is the steam that comes to each of these vessels. So we did it that way for safety. So we have a top level sensor on here. It's not in yet, But if there was a boilover, boom, it goes back to the control panel and says, shut off the steam, like automatic. But the students can dial in the amount of steam. It's just hands-on. There are no automated valves here. So I only have two points on each system that are actually controllable in terms of temperature and set points, and the control system will turn steam on and off. Everything else is really just feedback, feedback, like, and you're gonna have to shut the water on and off yourself. So it's very different than the RAM scaler. The RAM scaler is fully automated, all automated valves, and just right. Like, we could actually run that from home. We've never done that because it's totally not safe. We don't want to do that, but we got in and checked temperatures and stuff like that from home, and so it's pretty cool. Down here, it's hands-on. Everything is hands-on, which we really want in teaching. We want them to understand and figure out where the flow is, what valves they need to open to make it go one place or another. Get that like connection to the process deeply, so they understand that is critical.
And real quick, so to answer your question, no, it's actually a different provider in the RAM scaler. That is the Rockwell, which is another global engineering company, and this is Emerson, so they are separate. We like to play with everybody here, so we're friends with all the industry. We don't have any exclusive rights with anybody.
Cool. So for a knockout, so we're coming out of the whirlpool, we're gonna pump out of there, goes through a pipe, goes through a heat exchanger that's building onto the skid here. This is just a plate heat exchanger, pretty straightforward. And what we do is run hot wort, so wort's unfermented beer. Hot wort through one side, it comes out through another mass flow meter, micromotion flow meter from Emerson, so we can measure Plato and flow total flow rate on the way out. We go through another temperature sensor. And actually, I got to correct myself because this part can be automated as well. So there's an inline valve that is a variable state valve that can control the amount of cold water flow through the plate heat exchanger to automatically control the temperature. So if we wanted to, we could say, cool the wort down to 20 degrees C, and it will vary this valve to maintain that automatic. So we have the ability to do that or not. So really, there's 3 points of automation: steam on the kettle, steam on the mash, and then automated temperature cooling. So if we wanted to do that, pretty cool. So that's a great opportunity because this is pretty complicated control that students can go into and learn more about process control, PID control, et cetera, et cetera. So you get to show all that stuff here, and it's very small, hands-on. It's like a miniature brewery. Like, I kind of want to like shrink myself down to be about like this big and walk around like, oh, I'm like in a brewery now, but it's like a miniature brewery. It really is. So that's knockout, cool. And then the nice thing here, we have 2 skids. So there's this one I showed you, there's one right over here. So we can have 2 sets of students brewing at the same time, going to different fermenters. It's probably gonna be like controlled chaos in here when that's going on. But what I've really learned since I started teaching here is that we started brewing with like 20 students at once, and now we've worked towards dividing that into 2 teams of 10. With that, the class sizes have grown quite a bit. In fact, this semester, class size is really close to 30. And normally I would divide that into 2 teams. And this semester we're doing 4 to keep the number of people in this space down to a minimum so we can be distant from each other. So I have 4 teams, about 6 to 7 students each. And it's great. They all get the hands-on. They're all learning so much. And they're all just eager to do everything. So you don't have that situation where you're kind of in the back like, hey, what's going on? I can't see anything. Like, everybody's in there doing it, and it's great, and they're sharing the knowledge. So I definitely want to continue that, and that was really the inspiration behind designing 2 systems rather than 1, so that we can split the class in 2 and then have it go in 2 again, and have 5 or 6 students on each one. That's like perfect. So myself and the TA in here or something running with that, it's great. And always before any of this, the primary objective here is to be safe. So less people in here is good for being safe too. That's a lot. It's all about safety. So anyway, so that's why we have 2 skids. From a research perspective, the cool thing is we could easily bang out 2 brews a day on each skid. So we could bang out maybe 4 brews in one day. And we're going to see in a minute the cellar. We have a bunch of fermenters. We could fill all the fermenters in 2 days with like 8 brews, and I have some extras, we can even go more. And so that gives us the ability to go through a lot of tests at once. One of the things that I'm really familiar with that New Belgium is doing, Malt Trials, we'll bring in different malts or different spec malts, try them out, and see how they perform in terms of the brew house performance, in terms of extract, fermentability, flavor. Like, we could really bang out a lot of tests like that in no time, or anything for that matter. Maybe we try different. The brewer wants to try different hops in their recipe or do some recipe design. We have the ability to do that. Have the ability to test different brewing parameters and changing maybe multiple factors at one time. We can bang all that out pretty quick on these systems. So that's another reason to have more of the redundancy. And also, obviously, if something breaks, we have another system. That's pretty cool too. Yeah. Anything else you want to add on the brew skids, Jeff?
I do want to take it aside real quick and say that the godfather of the brewing program, Jack Avens, Crazy Jack, is on the call. We have a few unofficial mascots in the program, one of which alumni and Jack will recognize. So apologies for the faint of heart there. But
all hail the chicken. The chicken will have a prominent spot in here somewhere. So yeah, moving over here. So this skid goes, the flow is the same, just in the opposite direction. This we start up, mash mixer, down to the lauter tun, pump up to the kettle, down to the whirlpool, and then we just run a hose from here. And it's great because this skid, you can see the control crack kind of right next to me. Students can see all the brewing parameters right here, right behind them. That's the same idea on the other side. They'll have a computer there so they can see exactly what's going on. Maybe we'll have a big screen so everybody can watch too. So from there, we just go from a hose. We can measure extract out of here and go into the fermentation cellar. So over here we have a cellar of 8 50-liter fermentation tanks, conical vessels that are jacketed and with temperature control. The copper pipes that you see coming up here, those are coming from our glycol cooler. It's hard to do this. Now I know what it's like to be a weatherman, weather person on TV, right?
It's a real skill.
Yeah. So copper pipes are bringing a glycol solution that's cooled down to about 25 degrees Fahrenheit and circulating that through these vessels. Each one of the vessels has a control valve on there, so more automation, okay? On this side, each vessel is controlled. We can do a temperature set point, and then the control system will maintain that set point by turning the glycol valve on and off to circulate glycol up through the jackets and cool it down. Each vessel itself is connected with a couple different instruments. A temperature sensor, of course, for measuring the temperature, and then each one also has a top level sensor that came from Emerson. And this is really just a conductivity sensor. So if this were to get overfilled, it would give us a warning. But what I like about this even more, except that, like, if it starts to ferment, we always get some foam when fermentation starts. That foam will probably trigger this and give us an indication that fermentation has started in this vessel. So we could actually look at that offline, and I could go to sleep at night knowing that, like, oh, fermentation's going. It's one of the more fun things to do in brewing. You come in the next day, you see the fermentation going. In fact, I wish I could show you a picture today of our brewing interns. They came in to check the brew that they did yesterday, and it was foaming off and just blowing beer everywhere. It was going nuts. So pretty fun, and they were all excited about it. Really cool. So yeah, we've got 8 fermentation vessels. There are also equipped with CIP arms and a CIP ball. So I'll show you in a bit. We have a little CIP skid. CIP means clean in place. Brewing is really about 95% cleaning and 5% brewing, something like that. So these will be able to clean in place and hook up a system so students can see on a small scale exactly how you would clean on a large scale. So they can leave with that knowledge as well. Pretty cool. So we have all that instrumentation down here in the fermentation cellar. There's four fermenters here. We'll walk around and see the other side a bit, 4 on the other side. After fermentation, we don't have it here yet, but we'll have the ability to filter. Maybe someday a centrifuge, that'd be kind of cool. Right? We got a centrifuge in the budget, Jeff?
We're working on that.
So anyone's got a centrifuge budget, let us know. But so after fermentation, we cool down, and then we have a bank of 4 what we call bright tanks, or finished beer tanks, where we will carbonate the beer. They're all equipped with sight glasses, a sample valve. I didn't mention that on the other, but there's a sample valve on each one of these here. So we pull samples off.
For science.
For science, yes, for science. And by the way, this brewery is a research brewery only, so we're not making beer for sale here at all. It's just for student beer or research beer tests, et cetera, et cetera. So we're actually technically not selling beer here. That's what the ramp scale is for. So it's a pretty small batch, so it's not going to give you, not enough beer for me to last a week, really. Just kidding. So anyway, we got 4 bright tanks here for finished beer, and then from there we go to packaging. Currently, our packaging options have been students bottling. We've been kegging beer, and we've also been bringing in a can line from Cody Manufacturing. We just did that a few weeks ago here. Super fun. Student brought in a whole can line, rinsed through the whole thing, and we packaged up 4 batches of student beer and a bunch of other beer. Like in one afternoon, they all had hands-on understanding, seeing how packaging works, counter pressure filling, oxygen purging, like the whole business. Pretty cool. Yeah, so from there, maybe walk around us. We'll see the other side of this. With the cooler, storing finished goods, malt room, bunch of malt in the malt room there. It's pretty exciting. This is the Sacco brewing system that we were talking about earlier that the students still brew on. And so I talked about safety. This is a great system. They've been brewing on this since 2006, since the pro since Jack started teaching brewing here, and still works great. I've souped it up a bit with some extra pumps, and it's been really, really doing a great job for us. The thing with this, though, it's kind of like a big burner, propane burner used for boiling a turkey or something, or frying a turkey. So there's a lot of open flame here. These are normally really hot surfaces. It's really dangerous, and there's carbon monoxide coming off the open doors. But so I'm really excited to get away from the open flame and go into steam, which you're going to see at most commercial breweries. But we still have this for special projects. We're not going to get rid of it. We could do special stuff outside, or we have an exceptionally large class. We could have them brewing on this. We have 2 other teams on those. Lots of flexibility. Over here, some more tanks, so more cellar vessels. We also spec'd out 2 1-hectoliter vessels, so we could double batch, or maybe we have a special need to do one big fermentation and divide it up later. We can do that. So these are 2 1-hectoliter fermenters, and then 1 1-hectoliter bright tank. Fermenters are hooked up with these are hooked up with one extra instrument that the smaller fermenters don't have, and that is a in-tank densitometer. So we can actually watch in real time the density drop. As the yeast consumes the sugar, the density of the liquid drops as alcohol is produced, because alcohol weighs less than water. So it drops as it ferments. We'll be able to see that in real time on the control scale. That's pretty cool. Again, these are all temperature controlled, glycol, temperature controlled, et cetera, et cetera. And I guess last but not least, we've got a new CIP skid as well. Not much to see here, but there's a tank and a pump attached. It's on wheels. We can wheel it around and clean stuff. I also expect maybe we would use a ramp scaler for a special project now and then. But really excited to have that. And now some new electrical has been wired in this place as well for powering this sort of thing. Also got a couple filters we can use, a DE filter, activation zone filter, and a sheet filter that we use over here to demonstrate that as well. And it's an area of brewing that a lot of brewers don't like to think about, but it's really one of the most important parts of the brewing process to finish that beer up right, get the clarity the way you want it, et cetera, et cetera. So cool. You can show the other bank of fermenters back here if you want. So it's just the same as on this side as the other side. 4 more 40-liter fermenters on this side. These all have the lids open up on them, so they can go inside. They inspect, and students can understand sanitary design, or areas where things may not be so sanitary, where they might have to go in and clean, whatever. So pretty easy to go in there and see what's happening. And or if we want to dry hop or add things during the brew, each one of these is equipped with a hatch on top here as well. So during the ferment, if we want to add some hops and do some mid-fermentation dry hopping, because that's really hip and cool right now, open it up, throw some hops in, or whatever else we want. So pretty fun. So yeah, I hope any alumni out there, once this is going, I hope you come back and say hello sometime. I'll probably remember your face and definitely won't remember your name, but come by and say hello. Love to have you come by and check the system out.
Absolutely. And so we have a few questions here that I've seen. So first, I'll kind of go backwards. Jeff, what are the brights rated to? What pressure are the brights rated to?
Okay, yeah, great question. That's an excellent question. Everything here is not ASME certified. So that means the only pressure it's rated to is 15 PSI. So, which is about 1 bar pressure, which is really all you need for carbonating beer, as long as you can get it cold enough. I don't don't really see any need to go higher than that, unless we had some special needs, like we wanted to force nitrogen in or something like that. But no, these are not pressure-rated vessels. So, and again, usually you don't see pressure-related vessels out in the industry. Most vessels are not rated to that unless they're for a special purpose. So I advise you, if you are in a brewery and it's not rated ASME, please don't put it over 15 PSI. That's dangerous to do with gas.
You got to pay for those stamps.
Yeah,
so we got a shout out. So Haley Thorson graduated last year, and she's doing great work at 105 West Brew Co. So thanks, Aaron, for that. And then in terms of costs, of course, that's always a complicated question. Not one that we would shy away from. Complicated only because we have a fantastic, very supportive industry that covers a lot of this. An example would be that the Ramskeller brewery that we showed you last month is well over $2 million worth of equipment that we paid next to nothing for in terms of actual dollars. We paid for some of the build out and some of the contracting stuff, but we got that one, from the industry. This one, not quite the same. These vessels are all extremely custom. There was nothing like this just laying around. So we've paid about, again, it's all very complicated, but about $250,000 for all the stainless that Jeff was just showing you today. Not the two water vessels, but the brewing skids and all the cellar stuff. But even though these systems are not highly automated, the automation that is on there and the control panels and whatnot is worth around $250,000 to $350,000 just for those. And that was completely donated. We don't have the money for that. So we, of course, get our money from the money that we have that we've been paying for all of this is from donations that we've received from New Belgium. So that's why we're in the New Belgium Brewing, Fermentation, Science, Technology Lab, but then also Odell Brewing Company. So they did donate the Sacco system in 2008. And then when we launched the program and said, hey, look, we appreciate that, but we want to scale up and show more commercial brewing. We sat down with Doug and Wynn, and then ultimately the Odell Brewing family, the whole company, and they wanted to support that. So their donation, they wanted earmarked to go towards this brewing system. So this will actually, we're in the final stages of naming kind of the system, right? But it's going to have a nice collaborative name, and then powered by Emerson, Odell, and New Belgium, right? Those companies. So absolutely a ton of industry support. What's up, Rachel? She says we're putting your R&D brewery to shame, which yeah, we're here for you. Let's see. Sorry, I'm having a hard time scrolling. Yeah, we can't wait for you to come back and say hi and bring stickers so we can throw some Fremont stickers up on the cooler. Beer. All right. So Carol asks, are there legal complications with making the beer brewed and canned now by students available for sale, or maybe as a complimentary gift as a thank you for your donation to alumni or others? So I actually worked with the lobbyists and with our lawyers in crafting the language for the beer brewed in this brewery. And at first they were going to limit it. It had to be disposed of. Students would have been limited to 1 to 2 ounce, samples. We scrapped all of that, right? And basically created pretty flexible language. So the beer that was brewed here absolutely cannot be sold, but it can be tasted by students and people from the industry and experts and anybody that we deem can give us valuable sensory feedback. So in terms of gifts and thank yous, yes, we legally we need some sensory feedback on those, but it's absolutely doable. So when you're visiting us, pretty soon we'll have the beer being made here on tap, demonstrating draft systems, but we do can it up and bottle it up and keg it up. So we are always looking for some extra sensory panelists.
For sure.
And one thing, so I do want to, because we can demonstrate it, Jeff had mentioned the louder ton. A lot of brewers are pretty confused by this very tall, skinny vessel. Jeff, let's go into the lab over here and I'll have you explain kind of the science, but I'll show you when you talk about a louder ton, what brewers are typically thinking of are these vessels that are very, very wide. So, for example, if you go up to the Anheuser-Busch brewery, the biggest vessel, actually where this picture was taken from, is the ladder tun. They're looking out into the smaller kettles. The ladder tun is usually the widest, biggest, most massive vessel. So to see, in terms of width, so to see a tall, skinny vessel be the ladder tun is confusing. So Jeff, can you walk us through why we have such a funky looking ladder tun?
Great question. So this vessel, a little bit about the one answer question. I think at one time it might still be the largest ladder tun in North America. I think it's literally like 50 feet across or something. It's crazy. It's all about making it wide enough so that you don't have too deep of a bed. Now they're doing a big size batch there. I forget what it is, 700 barrels or something like that. So to get all that grain in there, you need to make it wider to maintain a certain bed depth. So it's all about filterability and flow rate through that bed. And that is described by something called Darcy's Law. So it's all about permeability and bed depth and a function. So it's actually a mathematical equation for this. So in this ladder tun, a commercial ladder tun, they really want to leverage a shallow bed. They're making a pretty high gravity beer here. So a lot of grain with shallow bed so they get the throughput up. Because having a lower distance to go, the shallower bed depth allows you to increase flow rate through that bed depth as described by Darcy's Law. D, like over the apostrophe kind of thing, R-C-Y. So the idea with the ladder tun that I designed it over there with Lakeside, I wanted to have a tall, skinny one so that that bed depth would be the same as what you see in a commercial brewery. There's certain guidelines around that. That ladder tun can also handle a really high gravity work. So say we want to make an 18 or 20 degree Plato work, we can do that over there. And some breweries are actually doing that. So even big commercial ones. So picture this, but take one conical section out of it, like whoop, and then put it in the lab. Now we have a miniature version of it with the same parameters around the depth of that bed. So we can actually test the flow rates and waterability based on mill gap settings, or maybe it has something to do with malt specs in terms of protein or beta glucans or whatever. We can see how the filterability might perform here at a small scale rather than a big scale. So if we have a big brewer that might want to switch it up, or maybe they got a bad crop year barley and want to optimize some enzymes to increase waterability or filterability later on, because it's kind of maybe not the best malt in terms of that crop year. They can potentially test them this size over here, see how it waters. We can look at flow rates. We have instrumentation for all of that, and then scale it up to a large size. So the idea is to do a small brewery, but make it scalable, rather than a homebrew size, just make a big water tun and whatever, put a bunch of stuff in there. Like we really put a lot of thought around how we can serve both craft brewing and big industrial brewing as well.
All right, so we got more questions coming in. Let me take a look. So what's up, Andrew? Andrew is actually one of the students that was from our first graduating class and is now working out with Diageo, and he's out at Bullet making some rad whiskeys and overseeing that process. So when we mentioned the brewing skids and research, we're talking, yes, a little bit about internal research, and we have, now we're in a position where we get to pay some of our undergraduates to be interns and kind of help out around here. But we are talking about external research. So part of the reason that New Belgium funded Jeff's position with us is because we have this lab and this, these awesome brewing systems, and what the person I was speaking with in New Belgium likened it to is we had an awesome race car, right? But now we needed gas, right, to get the thing going. So Jeff is the fuel here to get us cruising and get us moving. So so New Belgium is raring to go on doing some research in here, but absolutely we look forward to doing research with all of our industry partners.
And we really have the whole package. We have the brewing, the brewing part is kind of the last part, but in here we have an awesome analytical lab. We can do all the standard analytics from BDK, color, IBU, Anton Par, micro, yeast, whatever you want. We prop up our own yeast here. We have our own yeast bank, et cetera, et cetera. And then next door, there's now being commissioned, I can mention this, the Malt Lab. I just mentioned.
Please, yeah.
So we have a Malt Lab next door too, which probably would be good as another one of these to have Katie show you through that. We have a full Malt Lab over there where we can do an entire malt analysis or a certificate of analysis on malt, including enzyme activity, extract, moisture, friability, all that stuff. Yes, friability, because everybody gets to that slide in the lectures and they're like, what the heck is a friabilimeter? And I'm like, friability meter, measures friability. There you go, you know, but yeah, we have a friability meter now. It's pretty cool. So yeah, really excited to be able to do all that here so we can actually do the brews and analyze the malt right here that we do the brews with, look at the parameters within the brew. We've really, here in FST, we run this brewery and even the Sacco and the new brewery and the Ramskeller. We run it exactly like you would a world-class brewery in terms of when we take samples, what samples we take, what parameters, critical control points we look at, you know, pH, temperature, whatever it is. The students are logging all that stuff as if it's a real commercial brewery. We pull samples out at various points in the process to look at micro-analysis. Students go back, get that feedback loop, and really start to understand the whole process. You know, we're not in the business of teaching home brewing here. We're doing everything from grain to glass, and even the packaged goods are sterile filtered. We get micro-analysis on there. We get final beer and ABV analysis. We talk about why the ABV changes from, say, the bright tank to the package, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we really have the whole package here. I'm really excited to have it all work in concert together, you know, with the lab, the Malt Lab, this lab, and then the research brewery.
So Jeff, Rachel wants to know about the throughput through the same depth. Does it take longer on that small scale?
It probably is going to take longer than we used to do on, and we haven't brewed on it yet, so it remains to be seen. But theoretically, since it's probably a taller mash bed, it's going to take about the same amount of time you would have to take at a commercial brewery. And typically runoff at a commercial brewery might be an hour and 15 minutes, hour and a half, maybe longer, depending on the brew that you're doing. The current system, the Sacco system, we got it pretty easy. Really shallow bed depth, and we run off in like 30, 40 minutes. But I expect that to at least double. That's a really great point. And that we did that on purpose. It's not about the throughput here. We want to really model on a small scale what big brewers do. And most commercial breweries, big and small, even the small pub breweries and the tap rooms here, you know, it's going to take a while to ladder. You know, this is the way it is.
So, and then in terms of timeline, you know, some of the alumni on here will know that I was talking about the system over here in this lab going back probably 5 years now. I would always say next semester. I stopped saying that a couple of years ago, but
Next
like,
semester.
it's so for real this time, guys. Yeah, so next semester. So we're actually waiting right now. One thing I can show over here. So the server cabinet, we talked about, stuff is online. This nice box on the ground will be actually hanging up here in the ceiling because we just don't have space on campus. Nowhere better to put it.
Give us some more space.
But that has to go up. That ties in with the big stainless steel panel so that we can get everything activated. All the electrical's happening now. The mechanical utilities are done or near done. So we'll be commissioning very, very soon. Let's see, looks like we have a few minutes left. Yes, Jennifer, please come visit us and everybody. We can't wait to, you know, be able to have cheers and beers, you know, in the Ramskeller and say hello to you all in person and show you what's up here. You absolutely, yeah. I'm not sure who Please Don't Somebody China is, but you seem tuned in, so you'll believe it soon enough. That's all cool. Do we sell any swag? Yes, actually, the Ramskeller Brew House, we have T-shirts that for the Ramskeller Brew House. This cool stuff has been very limited runs. I was selling it kind of one-off for a little while through the program, but it's an insane amount of work. Jack can attest to that. What's up, Gabe? So then we had a student club that was doing it for a little while, making swag for us. But as things go with students, that's hard to keep going. So it comes and goes.
Jeff, there was also a question that was filled out in the survey before this. Number one was, what is your favorite style to brew? And then are there any super difficult styles to brew?
So that's a great question. So I like brewing all the different styles of beer because it's just so fun to play around with all the different raw materials. And from a technical standpoint, those different raw materials can bring really unique challenges that are fun to work on. For instance, we had a student last 2 semesters who graduated last spring who was gluten intolerant. She did her honors thesis on gluten-free beer. And during the class, since she couldn't taste any of the beer we made, we designed millet beers using malted millet from Grouse Malting, which is actually just north of here, that was founded and run by a former student here, Mike Twyla, and who also has, I think, at least 2, maybe more students working up there at the malt place. But anyway, that's not quite the question, but I like them all, including millet beers. We've done all kinds of interesting things here. I think way back when, maybe some alumni are in there, we did an orange creamsicle beer once. But in general, I tend to stick to pretty basic beers. This semester, we did a brown ale. We did a hoppy red ale with some Viking yeast, which was pretty cool. And we're doing a Belgian Abbey beer right now that's in the fermenters. And then as far as the most difficult beer, the students learn what the most difficult beer is for themselves in Brewing Science 2. And all my students now in Brewing Science 1 don't know this yet. And I'm like, next semester, you get to do the recipes. You get to do all that stuff. You have all the tools you need, and you're going to design the beers. And I give them the parameters. I'm the marketing department, right? And their beer is very difficult to brew. It's like a 4% alcohol, really light style, very delicate beer that they don't know this yet, because I think they all want to make like IPAs, fruited sours and stuff. And like, no, they're going to brew the same beer over and over again and try to hit the parameters. And they're going to see like all the subtle differences and problems that can happen in something like that, and really get deep into working the raw materials in the process to do that. Consistency, so they're going to learn how to brew. The most difficult beer is to make is a consistent beer, especially a really light, delicate beer like a light Kolsch or Pilsner, that kind of stuff. So versus like heavy hop, crazy hoppy IPA or Imperial Stout, like a lot of flavors there can cover up some flaws, for instance. So that's your difficult, and also I love brewing it all.
All right, I think we have time probably for one more question, if there are any from the audience, or Corey, if you have another one.
I had one more from the survey. It was saying, has the process of fermenting changed during these COVID times?
The process of fermenting?
It's timeless. It's timeless.
It's timeless, yeah. Has the fermenting process changed because of COVID? Is that what the question is?
I don't know. It just says, has it changed during COVID times?
It's a natural system. So we, regardless of what's happening in the world, the yeast don't care. And
don't care.
Jeff can tell you a little bit about a brewer's life.
I mean, don't get me going. I haven't had a beer yet. I usually have a couple beers. I'll tell you how the yeast actually compels us to make the beer. So, we're here to serve the yeast, and we enjoy, essentially, beer is yeast excrement. It is true. So yeast consume stuff, we drink its excrement, and somehow we like it. And probably the yeast do it that way so they can thrive and control the world. So anyway, that's a different perspective on it, maybe. No issues with fermentation and COVID, other than the direct effect on classes and how we do things here at CSU. Really.
Yeast don't care if it's Christmas or Hanukkah or anything that we humans, we mere mortals recognize. They don't care.
Right.
They're eating.
Yeah. And then Gabe had, I would say, probably the last question, because it's already 6:30. What's the first beer that's coming out of this?
What's the what?
The first beer that we're going to make.
Oh, that's a great question. I don't know, Gabe. What should it be?
I think Jeff and I are really missing Cam's Gold from the Ramskeller.
Cam's
We'll
Gold.
see.
Yes. Maybe we do some nice Cam's Gold. Something. The pale ale I liked a lot too. Cam's Green.
The Kolsch is Cam's Gold.
The Kolsch, pretty much the class beer is Cam's Gold. They don't know it yet, but it's a lighter version of Cam's Gold. Pretty easy drinking hybrid lager beer. Yeah,
and that's what we commissioned.
Yeah, nice.
That's what we commissioned the Ramskeller on. So
yes, I hope to do some fun stuff here too. There's been talk. We have an awesome teacher assistant here, graduate teacher assistant John Wilson, and we love to explore using all kinds of different ingredients. And he's got a real diverse background in fermentation from around the world, and we've often talked about cultivating yeast from the belly of Cam and then brewing with that. So I hope that we get to do that someday too. Cam beer.
Awesome. Well, I think on that note, it is 6:30. So thank you both so much for doing this. I know this was awesome, especially for my own personal experience. That was really cool. And thank you everybody for logging in. And on that note, we will be posting this on our YouTube channel, which is the CSU Alumni Association channel. So feel free to check this out. It should be up by the end of the week. And we will also send this to you in our upcoming email that's coming out by the end of the week as well. So thank you again, Jeffs. Thank you everybody for showing up, and go Rams.
Go Rams.
Thanks for joining.
Thanks for coming, everybody.